I do love a good minestrone soup. I've tried quite a few over the years, but this is the one I keep coming back to. It comes from one of my old Time Life books, The Cooking of Italy. It's finished with a simple herb and garlic garnish, a little grated cheese on top, and it's such a comforting and delicious bowl of soup. Over the years I've made a few changes to this recipe, just using what's available today. So I hope any Italians watching this video will forgive me for calling it a minestrone. So there's quite a few things that go in this soup and a little bit of chopping. And just recently I picked up a vegetable chopper from the op shop for $5. And they come with so many attachments, but I only use 2, and it's the fine little dice, or the one I have here, the larger dice. And I love using this for minestrone because all the vegetables are the same size, or you could just use a knife or whatever you have that you like to use. So these are just 2 small carrots, and in the recipe on the website I'll put the measurements in grams as well. What I use today, I weighed them all already for you. So easy. You can get them for $20 brand new, I think, these days, but they make such light work of this. And then I have 2 medium sort of potatoes here. And I have 1 large zucchini. This is quite a large one. And that's just filled up this. And these vegetables get cooked together, along with 1 large stick of celery, or I've just got 2 smaller sticks here. And you'll need 1 smallish onion. And for that one, I'll use the small dice. Now, if you do buy one of these, a few things to know. These are very sharp. And also, I don't overload what I put on here. It's tempting, but you know, you'll end up picking it out of here. And the third thing, most important, don't put it in the dishwasher because it will shrink and it won't work again. But look at that. Finely diced onion in like a second. Now you'll also need a leek, a small leek. And if you can't get a leek, just use another small onion instead. And this one I'll cut by hand because I need to rinse them. And I'll put them in a colander and go and give them a quick rinse just to get out any hidden dirt. And these get fried separately with the onion. And I think that's all I can use my nicer dicer for. Now this soup is easily made vegetarian. Just leave out the bacon, and easily made vegan as well. Any butter I use in this recipe, just swap it for olive oil. So I have just 2 rashers of bacon here, and I'm just going to remove the rind, but keep the fat because that's why the bacon is added, one of the main reasons. You'll see soon, I'm going to render it down. Now the original recipe calls for salt pork, which is a real fatty piece of the pig. But however, I can't get that in Australia. And you know, sometimes I use speck, which is great, but bacon works beautiful as well. And all I want to do here is cut it into a fine dice, well, a small dice, a rough dice actually. So you also need some tomatoes, and you can use about 500 grams, a pound, maybe, of fresh, ripe tomatoes, just roughly chopped. You don't have to worry about skinning them or removing the seeds. Or you can just use 1 400 gram tin of crushed tomatoes or peeled tomatoes. These days I prefer using the whole peeled tomatoes because I find they're less acidic, and with a clean hand I just squash them. Now you also need beans, and the original recipe says to use dried beans, and I've done that plenty of times, and I'll leave the instructions for that in the recipe on the website. However, there are so many things going in here that tinned beans work absolutely fine, and I'm just using cannellini beans today. The recipe calls for haricot beans. You can use any white beans or even pinto beans. And what I'll do is I'll just go and rinse these so they're ready and set them aside. Now this recipe calls for rice, but you could also use pasta if you prefer, but I love using the rice. And contrary to many recipes, I really enjoy using arborio rice because I just think it puffs up beautifully and it's a lovely mouthfeel when you eat it. And this is like 120 grams, a half a cup Australian. And the only thing I do to it is rinse it because I want to remove that excess starch. And I like having my ingredients ready because it just makes the cook more enjoyable. And things get cooked in stages, you know, but just using the one pot, there's a bit of out and in, but you'll see it's so worth it. So I have a 7-litre stock pot here. You could use a 5-litre one, but it does make quite a lot of soup. Now I've got 60 grams of butter, and when the butter starts foaming, then I add the potatoes, the carrots, the zucchini, and the celery. And over a medium heat, I continually toss these for about 2 minutes. I don't want anything browned, but I want the vegetables nice and sealed. And you know, you might think, why do this step? And seriously, it adds flavour. And that's long enough. It's been 3 minutes. And now I just tip them back into the bowl and set them aside. Then into the same pan, over a moderate heat, I add a splash of oil and then the bacon. And I stir this constantly until the bacon is crisp and it has rendered its fat. And don't worry if the bottom of your pot is getting brown like mine, the soup will pick up all that fond on the bottom once we put the liquid in. And that is all flavour. And once the bacon has rendered most of its fat and it's starting to become crispy, I transfer it to a paper-lined towel to drain, but keep all that fat in the pan. And then I add the onion and the leek. And cook, stirring that often. So that's only been about 3 minutes and that's enough. Most of the fond has been picked up and the liquid that I'm about to add will pick up the rest. Now I add the crushed tomatoes, 1.5 litres of chicken stock. But I'm just going to use water and I'll just put it in that bowl to get the rest of those tomatoes. 1,500 mils. Then I add the sautéed vegetables from earlier, along with any lovely butter that was in there. Because I added water and not chicken stock, I'm just using chicken stock powder, and I'm going to add 3 big teaspoons, 1 bay leaf, a few parsley sprigs, a teaspoon of salt. I can always add more later. Same with the pepper. And I'm going to bring this to the boil. And once it does come to the boil, I reduce the heat to a steady simmer and put a lid on, partly ajar, and I'll simmer that gently for 25 minutes. Now you might be thinking, and rightly so, she didn't put any garlic in. Well, you can definitely go ahead and put a couple of cloves of garlic in the soup. However, the garlic gets put in the herb sprinkle that gets sprinkled on top for each individual serve, or you can sprinkle it on the whole soup and it just lifts the flavour of it. It's delicious. And I've got 1 large clove of garlic here, which I'm going to chop together with a small handful of parsley. I'll just remove those stems, which is like a French persil, I suppose. Or like when you make ossobuco and you put the gremolata on top with a lemon, that's delicious. Actually, I should never tried this with a bit of lemon in it. Maybe it will be lovely. Now, if you have fresh basil, chop up about 2 tablespoons of that with this. Otherwise, 2 small little teaspoons of dried basil. And that gets set aside to be sprinkled on top later when it's all finished. Another ingredient that gets added with the rice is some frozen peas. Now, if you can get fresh peas, they can go in at the same time with the potatoes and the carrots sautéed in the butter. but I can't get fresh peas these days. So I just use frozen peas, and I found this brand, actually my daughter put me onto this brand. They're really lovely, organic green peas. And after 25 minutes, remove the bay leaf and the parsley sprigs if you can find them. And now into this goes the beans, the rice, the bacon, which was quite crispy now, and a really big cupful of frozen peas. And I'm going to bring this back to the boil. And when it comes back to the boil, I just reduce the heat and maintain a steady simmer for about, up to 20-25 minutes, just until the rice is cooked. And that might only take 15 minutes depending on the rice you're using. And I'll simmer that uncovered. So that actually has had 25 minutes. I have my tasting spoons ready and it smells beautiful. And now is the time to taste it for seasoning. Oh, yeah, I love this soup. I think the seasoning's actually spot on. Except, now please don't judge me for this one, but just a teaspoon of sugar just to take that edge off the tomatoes. But that's all, just 1 teaspoon. You don't have to do that, that's just me. And it's lovely and thick and just full of goodness. Oh, smells beautiful. A nice big bowl full, and then just a little bit of the herb mixture on top, and then a little grating of any cheese you like. I've got some pecorino here. For me, one of the hardest challenges with having a YouTube channel is knowing what to post next. What do people want to see? What recipes should I make? However, sometimes I just make what I feel like eating, and this is one of them. This year already, I think I've made this 6 times or more, even in summer, because it is fabulous meal prep. After work, I just get home and heat up a bowl, and if I've got any cheese, I sprinkle it on top, and I've got a delicious meal, which is highly nutritious as well. And this will last 5 days in your refrigerator, and it freezes very well. I hope you enjoy this recipe as much as I do, and thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you again soon.